Welcome to another edition of the Routine Jumper Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything NBA basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we are coming off yet another exciting night of hoops. Two overtime games, another double overtime matchup for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and a crazy opening to the season for the Denver Nuggets, taking the loss to the Golden State Warriors. Just Steph Curry doing what Steph Curry does. But before we get into all of that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily NBA content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest NBA podcasts here on the YouTube platform. So remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And let's go ahead and get right into the episode. Starting with the Oklahoma City Thunder playing in their second straight double overtime game of the season. Two double overtimes, two victories. A lot of sweat, a lot of blood, and a lot to think about as the Oklahoma City Thunder, proving once again why they're one of the deepest teams in basketball. This is a team that came into the game, no Casey Wallace, no Alex Caruso. They also were missing, if I'm not mistaken, they were missing Isaiah Joe as well. Obviously, already missing Jalen Williams. He's going to be out for the first couple of weeks of the season. So a lot of their best perimeter defenders were not available for this game. Very notable given the fact that the Indiana Pacers rely very heavily on the fact that they are a pace and space team, and more particularly how they operate in transition. Even without Tyrese Haliburton, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but even without Tyrese Haliburton, this team has athletes, and without Tyrese Haliburton, these guys have um, the ability to push the ball down the floor at a high rate. Like, it seems like Rick Carlisle's system is just simply predicated off of getting the ball off the inbound and almost creating transition instantaneously by pushing the ball up the court as fast as humanly possible and getting right into the offense early into the shot clock and trying to generate as many potential looks as early in the shot clock as they can. And that's something that was able to translate in a real way because defensively, the Oklahoma City Thunder didn't have as many people to just throw around at a Benedict Mathurin, at a Aaron Nesmith in this game, and it really showed. I'm gonna read a couple quotes from the after the game about from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a couple about AJ Mitchell, somebody who was really special in this game, has been a huge part of why the Oklahoma City Thunder are 2-0 right now. Let's start off with what Shai said first, talking about just why he was still on the floor playing 45 minutes in this game after playing 47 in the first, saying two things: being in the moment and understanding that we're down five, it's 3 minutes left, there's a lot of time left. Then also understanding the beginning of the season is just as important as the end of the season. The difference in home court advantage in the playoffs could be one game and one win. We know firsthand home court in the playoffs is very helpful, especially when you go 7 games. So we don't ever want to take an opportunity for granted. So I think that's really important for a young team because remember, the Oklahoma City Thunder are the second youngest team in NBA history to win a championship, right? And that alone is already a certain level of pressure that most youthful stars are not aware of the ramifications later, right? Like, when you win a championship that early, you just think you can get back again, and you just view yourself as this team that only has so much more in front of them and all these other things. And you hear quotes from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander like this, and you realize he understands the magnitude of the moment, which is the thing that everybody knows now and kind of understood coming out of that finals run, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder are the hunted now. See, once upon a time, the Oklahoma City Thunder were the scrappy team that lost to the Houston Rockets, James Harden, Russell Westbrook in the bubble, looked like this scrappy team with Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chris Paul, and Dennis Schroeder were the two best guards on the perimeter at the time. And they were this building team. Momentum, momentum, momentum. But they were viewed as like underdogs the entire time. And last season, A lot of people expected them to have a really strong regular season run after they made the additions of Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, and they were the best team in the Western Conference and eventually the NBA champions, right? It it's huge for a star who's been through both versions of that organization. The one that was the underdog that had to kind of figure out how to get to the moment, and then be the one that now is coming out of that moment and saying more work to do. Where I know that this Oklahoma City Thunder team is going to be fine simply because if they follow as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander goes, which they will and they do, they're going to be in good shape because they don't see themselves any further ahead than they actually are, which is that regardless of the dynasty talks and regardless of the fact that there's conversations about whether or not the Thunder can win in back-to-back years after the last 6 seasons we've seen the champion change. Knowing that he views this as just a whole new season, start from zero, right? We're 1-0, now we're 2-0. That's big for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they're in an interesting space though because they're having to figure out what they're made of from a depth perspective really early on with some of these injuries. And again, it shows how deep of a team they are that they're able to miss guys like Jalen Williams, Casey Wallace, Isaiah Joe, Alex Caruso, and still have dudes like Aaron Wiggins who had 23-9 in this game, or having AJ Mitchell come off the bench and drop 26 in this game and get to the free throw line 8 times. He was huge in the first game against the Houston Rockets as well, especially in that first half. Just knowing that they still have guys who can like step in and really like fit, not just be available, not just kind of take up space, but really fill the role is huge. Here's what Coach Mark Daigneault said after the game about AJ Mitchell. He said everybody has a lot of trust in him and his talent, but I think the steadiness in these two environments in both games, he didn't really blink. So we knew the talent and impact, but sometimes it takes guys a little bit. They seem a little wide-eyed. That was not the case for him. And Shea spoke on the depth a little bit himself, saying different guys stepping up. Different guys stepping up. A lot of guys were stepping up tonight. Like to play that much last game. Obviously, we're a little banged up. This team never makes excuses. It's always ready for their moment. Again, I think the most important thing for the Oklahoma City Thunder as a team looking to repeat, as a team that young looking to make another championship run, is understanding that you're not going to get dealt the same hand that you were last year. You're already starting the season at a disadvantage that you didn't experience very much last season because Jalen Williams had a clean bill of health throughout the entirety of last year. You didn't deal with injury issues from Casey Wallace and Alex Caruso very much, if not at all, last season. You actually didn't even have to rely on AJ Mitchell much last season, and he was somebody that was injured to he was somebody that was injured for a great deal of time, which actually took him out of the rotation for a little bit. But you didn't have to rely on him as part of your depth. He was just a very good piece. And in the early portion of the season, before he got hurt, he looked like the diamond in the rough that he looks like right now. It just was on a lesser scale. He looked like a very productive floor spacer and connector. But like through the first 2 games, he looks like a guy who can like really shot create and self-generate for himself in a way that like gives Shai Gilgeous-Alexander somebody else to rely on the perimeter in certain situations, and keeps the offense steady without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor. That's one of the biggest things that you kind of fear without Jalen Williams is like who's going to initiate offense when you take Shai out? Because Chet, although he's a solid shot creator, he still doesn't have like the ball handling chops at that center spot to be somebody that you're going to try to run offense through from the top of the key and have him initiate. And then outside of that, when you look at the rest of their rotation, like, yeah, Aaron Wiggins is solid, but he's starting right now. Ousmane Dieng, I don't think they trust him to initiate offense right now. And without guys like Isaiah Joe and Casey Wallace available in this game, like AJ Mitchell is the next closest dude to somebody that you feel like you can hand the ball to and ask him to run point, not just like for the perspective of getting other guys involved, but actually trying to make the offense work in OKC's favor. It's a long-winded way of saying that I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are in a situation now where anybody who thinks they're in trouble doesn't understand how deep of a team this is. But I do think at the same time, they are a team that is going to get everybody's best shot. It's showing through the first two games that they are going to be battle tested early and often. And you pair that with their injury situations across the roster, and it's a clear indication that this year is not going to be anything like last season. And I'm sure they already knew that, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander carries himself as if he already understands that, and the team follows him. But these first two games, to put a bow on this, these first two games for the Oklahoma City Thunder are a representation of just how hard it is to go back to back as a champion, regardless of how talented you are. And it's because when you become the hunted, you are getting everybody's best shot every single night. It was one of those things that made the Miami Heat run so intriguing once upon a time when I remember they came off of the championship, or I think it was the year they went to go win the championship, and they started the season off like 26-1 or something crazy like that, right? And it was that insane run where I think it was them coming off the championship. You guys can correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna go with it either way. That they go on this insane run of just being undefeated, but they're getting everybody's best shot on a nightly basis. And that's what made it so impressive, because it's like these are close games. These are down to the wire, got to get it done, play through your star player and see them operate in crunch time kind of games. And they were still able to pull out the win. And that's what makes them feel even more unbeatable, because Oklahoma City, they had an insane point margin. They had a, excuse me, Oklahoma City had an insane point margin last season where they were blowing folks out. Like, they were in position. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was not playing double overtime games last year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was like sitting for significant periods of time through like the mid third quarter to like the mid fourth quarter sometimes, or being pulled in the early fourth quarter to get to sit because they were whooping on folks last season. Again, they're hurt right now. And when they get healthy, that'll help them out a ton. And thankfully for them, in the meantime, they have real depth still, with the fact that they have, the other Jalen Williams at center. They have, Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren to hold down that front court rotation. And then as far as the guards, you still have Lou Dort, AJ Mitchell, Aaron Wiggins. I'm sure that, the whole thing with Case and Wallace won't last too long. We know that the Alex Caruso thing shouldn't be too long because his is just concussion protocol. So, like, they're going to get back healthy and hopefully very soon. But in the meantime, this is a team that is a little banged up, getting everybody's best shot, but they've been able to persevere through it. And that goes to show you, again, it's hard to win a championship, but this team, they're built for it. If out of any of the teams that we've seen in recent memory win the NBA championship, this is the team that looks the best built to actually go back to back. And it's because, unlike the Denver Nuggets, unlike the Boston Celtics, this team is seeing the least roster turnover from the championship year to the very following season of any of the more recent champions, in terms of bringing back the talent that got them to where they were. And also, I think this Oklahoma City Thunder team, they're going to end up getting healthy at the right time, and that's going to help them in being able to get right back into the mix again of being not just like a championship contender, but like the lead team in the Western Conference. The fact that they were able to pull this game out, again, just shows they've got a lot ahead of them. But I'm glad to hear and glad to see that they're just taking it one game at a time, because at the end of the day, being hunted is so much different. It's so much different from being the hunter, because now you're getting everybody's best shot. You're not going to be blowing folks out on a night-to-night basis, because everybody's going to be trying to be the first team to hang the L up on the new champions. But so far, so good for the Thunder, man. And shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. 55, crazy work. Crazy work. Let's talk about the Indiana Pacers in this game, though, right? I think it's important to note just how impressive Indiana was in their home opener despite the loss, because everybody just kind of writes this team off because of the Indiana because of Indiana missing Tyrese Haliburton. And that's an understanding feeling to know that, like, when you're missing a guy that's an all NBA caliber player at the point guard position, when you're missing somebody who really is the representation of what your offense is all about, which is pace, running in transition, pushing the ball up, hitting guys ahead in transition, creating easy offense by having a lot of movement in the half court. Tyrese Halliburton is the walking embodiment of what Rick Carlisle wants to do offensively. But the philosophy itself that Rick has instilled in this team, it's one that still translates with the talent that they have. And you look at what they were able to do from a point distribution standpoint here. 36 points from Benedict Mathurin. Everybody believes that he's going to be like most improved player of the year caliber. And game one set the tone that, like, he's a guy that with this new responsibility to have so much more time on the ball, he's going to be special. Pascal Siakam, 32 and 15, hit a couple of big shots throughout this game. And they just got so much work from their bench. So much work from their bench. 48 points between Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin, and Jarris Walker. Shout out to Jarris Walker, by the way. A guy who just continuously seems like he was discouraged and frustrated with his role in this on this organization the last few years. It just seemed like he really couldn't find his fitting. He was drafted top 10, and they bring in Obi. He barely plays. They bring in Obi Toppin to almost like kind of play over top of him. And you kind of ask yourself, like, is this guy going to get any kind of real burn to show why he was regarded as one of the top forwards coming out of University of Houston that year? And we just never got to see it. And this year, Rick Carlisle kind of dusted him off. Game one, dusted him off and said, like, okay, young man, show us what you got. Show us what you got. And he played well. 30 minutes, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Didn't hit the three ball at a high enough clip for my personal liking, as a guy that I know has real potential to shoot the three ball at that power forward position. But I'm glad that he was not afraid to take them. Obi Toppin, 20 points off the bench. I mean, the man missed all 8 of his threes. He hits one or two of them things, and maybe this game goes differently, right? And Ben Shepherd, 39 minutes off the bench, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. And I think he was big time. He was big time because the Andrew Nembhard thing, obviously that's a work in progress. I feel like Andrew Nembhard is somebody that I feel like a lot of people view as this like starting point guard in the NBA, that like if he weren't playing behind Tyrese Haliburton, he would be so much better and blah 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 blah. And I don't necessarily buy it. I think Ben Mathurin is more likely to take like this crazy jump because of the Tyrese Halliburton absence than Andrew Nembhard. I actually think that Tyrese Halliburton's absence is going to expose really how much of a backup guard Andrew Nembhard really is. And I don't mean that in a negative way, right? One of my favorite players in the NBA is a backup point guard role player, Tyus Jones. I'll reiterate this a ton through the NBA season because one of the teams that I'm going to be watching closely, as I said in the very first episode, is the Orlando Magic. And so there's nothing wrong with being a top tier backup point guard. You can still be one of the 30 best point guards in the league while coming off the bench. Just because you don't start doesn't mean you can't be in that conversation. But it's completely different when you are the man running the show at point guard versus the guy that's just trying to keep the ship afloat off the bench against the second unit. And another guy who's a really good representation of this is like the past versions of Tyler Hero, right? Before last season, Tyler Hero was somebody that when you put him in the starting lineup, you didn't get the same kind of production that you expected from him, as a guy who kind of is rooted in scoring the basketball and everything like that. But as soon as he got pulled to the bench and was coming off the bench as part of the second unit again, He was killing folks. And now, he slowly but surely played himself into being a guy who you can rely on in that starting unit with Bam Adebayo and those guys. And he'll be a good player for them when he gets back healthy next to Norman Powell and Andrew Wiggins and, all of them. But he's a guy that once upon a time, despite his talent, tended to look the best when he was killing second units. And when he wasn't, he looked kind of pedestrian. I think that's going to be a lot of what Andrew Nemhart ends up being this season. I don't know if that means that they end up starting Ben Shepherd, but I do think that, I do think that Nemhart is in a certain situation where Rick Carlisle is going to learn a lot about him early, and I think a lot of Indiana Pacers fans are going to learn this soon about Nembhard that, yes, he had himself a really strong postseason the last 2 years, but, you know, winning 16 games versus an 82 game regular season stretch, it's a completely different bear. Yes, the stakes are higher in the postseason, but it's 82 games, different looks, facing all 29 other teams in some capacity throughout the year. It's a completely different animal at the starting point guard position. So I think that they are going to be in an interesting situation with Andrew. I don't think that just because he only played 16 minutes and had 4 points in this game, that is indicative of him being a bad player, as I said before, um, because he isn't. First of all, he just isn't. Um, I think that the injury for him in this game too also is something that's going to be another big hit because that left shoulder takes away from his ability to knock down the three ball at a high clip. And that's something that made him kind of special too during that postseason run. Going down with that injury, not being able to play the second half, he's someone that I feel like because he's so impactful on the defensive end as a perimeter defender, that injury, we'll see what all of that means, right? But shout out to Ben Shepherd. Shout out to Ben Shepherd for being able to hold the fort down. Again, another interesting factor of this is if Andrew Nemhart is healthy and plays in the second half, does that impact the game as well? I'm not necessarily sure. Again, I hate bagging on a guy who didn't even get to finish the game. But I do feel like there's going to be real question marks with Andrew Nemhart throughout the entirety of the season. Unfortunately, him getting off to a rocky start, both offensively and in terms of going down with the injury, is two indicators of that. Just for those who think I may be giving him a hard time, when he was on the floor in his 16 minutes, he had 4 points, 4 assists, was 0 of 4, 0 of 5 from the field, and missed both of his 3 point attempts. He finished the game as a -3, and he had 2 fouls and 2 turnovers. Like, I'm not just saying this to try to like kick a man while he's down. I'm saying this because even when he was on the floor in his 16 minutes, he just didn't look right. And now with the shoulder injury, a guy who already had missed all 5 of his field goal attempts now is going to be dealing with something that could hinder his ability to finish through contact. So Andrew Nemhart is going to be a little questionable, I think, especially in the beginning portion of the season. But nonetheless, I want to get to the main point, the main point of this section of the podcast, talking about the Indiana Pacers being that they're fine. They're fine without Tyrese Haliburton right now. Are they going to be championship contenders? No. No. They're going to be good, though. But the Indiana Pacers, man, they as an organization, and a lot of hoop heads will know exactly where I'm going with this, but the Indiana Pacers as an organization, I feel genuinely don't know how to lose. And what I mean by that is this is not a team that knows how to just genuinely tank a season away with the anticipation of trying to get a lottery pick and building up to getting, a blue chip prospect in the top 10 of the NBA draft. Like they don't know how to do that. And I don't mean that in a negative way, genuinely. If you go back to the time of Victor Oladipo taking over the Indiana Pacers, right? This is following the Paul George goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder situation. And a lot of people thought, PG leaves, you no longer have Roy Hibbert, you don't have David West anymore. The ghost of Danny Granger's past is now gone as well. And the team that was battling with LeBron James and the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference semifinals all the time or the Eastern Conference finals all the time for a 2 to 3 year stretch. They just weren't there anymore. And so a lot of people thought, oh, well, the Indiana Pacers are in reset mode. They're going to take a step back. They're not a big market, so they're going to have to build through the draft. They'll have a couple of losing seasons. They'll pick in the top 10, and they'll go kill. And that's the way they'll do it. And instead, with Victor Oladipo as their best player, they were consistently finishing as like a top 4, top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference on a year-to-year basis. And everybody will go back to that year where Victor Oladipo single-handedly, if I put it lightly, Victor Oladipo single-handedly, dog walked the Indiana Pacers through a 7-game series with the Miami Heat, and they dang near won the thing too. Like, he backpacked them into a 7-game series against the big three, the Heatles, Miami Heat, and they nearly won the series. This Indiana Pacers team, regardless of who the coach is, regardless of who the players are, regardless of who the star is any given year, they just know how to win basketball games. This first game indicated to me that Ben Mathurin is going to have himself an most improved player kind of season. It proves to me that Pascal Siakam can be a legitimate number one when you need him to. And it also proves to me that the Indiana Pacers are still going to finish as a top 5, top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference because they have the infrastructure internally to still just be super competitive on a night-to-night basis, and the philosophy of how they play sticks with them even with the fact that Tyrese isn't available. One thing that stood out from last season and clearly translated through the first game of this year is that they're still going to have one of the deepest benches in the NBA. Shout out to Jay Huff, who they got from the Memphis Grizzlies this past summer, and he kind of acts as this buffer at the center position because, Isaiah Jackson, somebody who has a real injury history. They bring in Jay Huff to play backup center. They have Tony Bradley as well as a backup center as well. And those are two guys who just really can eat up space and take up good minutes. And Jay Huff looked good offensively. Don't get me wrong, finished the game with only 5 points, only knocked down 1 3. But if you watch the game, he looks like a guy that okay, wait a minute, he can eat up some center minutes and, be effective on this offense. He looks like somebody who can, fit right in with the way we play fast and in transition. And, he's not a high flyer, but he's a guy who you can trust, on a backdoor cut to finish around the basket. You like that from them. Jarris Walker, like I mentioned beforehand, being able to dust him off and really trust him to play 30 minutes in this game. And mind you, Aaron Nesmith, Ben Shepherd, and Ben Mathurin all fouled out in this game. Now, granted, a handful of those fouls came in, the second overtime, just simply, trying to send guys to the line to kind of extend the game. But still, this Indiana Pacers team is going to be fine. They're going to be more than fine because their offensive philosophy sticks. Their bench depth is going to be top 5 in the league in terms of how productive they are this year. That's just a given. They are a deep basketball team, and Rick Carlisle trusts their bench on a night-to-night basis to honestly play deep into the second and third quarter. He sometimes let that second bench unit rock almost like they're the starters. And number 3, I think that Ben Mathurin is going to absolutely take off. So if you don't have your odds bets placed for most improved player just yet, Ben Mathurin, just saying, might be a guy you want to consider. Benedict Mathurin is going to be a guy that's going to be really special this year. And I don't think it was a fluke that he had 36 points and 11 rebounds in this first game. I don't think it was a fluke that he got to the free throw line 17 times in this game. The guy plays with grit. The guy plays hard. He's a bruiser. He likes to get to the basket. I like that. And despite the fact that he took 8 threes, I know as a driver, he is a dangerous finisher around the basket. Benedict Mathurin is going to be a problem, which is going to make this Indiana Pacers team a problem all year long. Shout out to the Pacers, man, because a lot of people are going to be doubting them all year long. This game, they lost it, but it's a tone setter that sends a message to the rest of the Eastern Conference that, they're not going out sad because they don't have Tyrese. They're going to be solid. And it should strike fear into the East because if they're able to do stuff like this without Tyrese, if they're able to do stuff like this with Andrew Nemhart going down early in this game due to injury, what do they look like when those guys are back healthy? Just saying. Next up, Golden State Warriors, man. Get another big time dub. They play their first overtime game of the year. Denver Nuggets have their season debut on the road. Have to take the L, unfortunately, in that one. Steph Curry, game tying 3-pointer late in the fourth to send it to OT. Finished the game with 42 points. And the Golden State Warriors look like a team that's about to make a championship run. Now, they got some squads they got to go through. So, can't pencil that in after one game. But if there was one overreaction that I have from this game early on, is that the Golden State Warriors look poised to try to make another title run. And the reason why it's so important to say that is because, this is a team that people were really questioning coming in to the year, given a lot of the drama of the summer. The first one being the issues with trying to re-sign Jonathan Kuminga, to sign or not to sign, right? And then eventually being able to avoid him signing the qualifying offer, still getting him a lucrative enough deal that you can use both as a way to keep him on the roster for a few more seasons. It will be this season, next season, and then I believe there's like a team option as the last year. But also potentially use him as a trade chip because the salary's so high. But because of the Jonathan Kuminga issue, they had a bit of an issue building out their depth through the offseason because they had to wait for the Jonathan Kuminga ball to fall first before they could start signing guys to the roster. But then they finally get that cleaned up. They bring in Al Horford. They bring back Gary Payton. And I believe it was DeAnthony Melton as well was the other guy they were able to bring in. But that's neither here nor there. This team just looks battle tested already. This team looks like they're going to be able to close games. Steph Curry bouncing back from only having 18 against the Lakers, 42.6 rebounds, 42.6 rebounds, 7 assists. Got to the free throw line 8 times, knocked them all down. Knocked down 50% of his threes, 6 of 12 from beyond the arc. Good luck, Jimmy Butler. Apparently he has some kind of mini bet that he's going to have a better 3-point percentage than Steph Curry this year. Well, they both shot 50% in this game, but it was definitely on different volume. So we'll see how that goes. Jimmy Butler finished the game with 21 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists of his own. Got to the free throw line 8 times on his own. That's special. And that's special because their ability to close games is going to be hinged on 2 things. One, Jimmy Butler's consistency and engagement in the game as an offensive initiator on a night-to-night basis. Timid Jimmy is not going to get it done if this team wants to be a championship contender, right? Everybody knows Jimmy Butler has this weird persona about himself during the regular season where he tries to become like a Steve Nash, Rajon Rondo kind of point guard or something. Like for some reason, he's so passive as an offensive generator during the regular season where he makes it seem like he's not one of the best shot generators at the small forward position in the NBA. He is somebody that in isolation situations, one-on-one situations, and even one-on-one opportunities, and even as a slasher and backdoor cutter, he is one of the better off-ball players in the NBA just as much as he is an on-ball player. And he just doesn't utilize it so much. So seeing situations like this game where he got big buckets for them, especially in that third quarter, that's huge. The number 2 thing is this team's ability to get to the free throw line. See, before Jimmy Butler came to the Golden State Warriors last season, they were one of the worst teams in getting to the free throw line as a squad. And as soon as Jimmy Butler got there, like within 3 to 4 days, basically, because I think they played like 2 games in like a 4-day time frame. But basically within like 3 to 4 days and within the first month of Jimmy Butler being on the squad last year, they like skyrocketed to like a top 10 team in free throw attempts per game. And for a team that does not have a ton of offensive shot creation on the roster, and I like Jonathan Kuminga, but he's still kind of learning. He has, splashes of where his athleticism is such a benefit for them, but he's not somebody you can like play through, right? They only have two guys you can genuinely play offense through, and that's Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. Um, I don't think you can like have Pods be a lead initiator. And Buddy Hield is a catch and shoot threat. He's not somebody you're like gonna be asking to have a real on ball repetition with. He's somebody that you want to see coming off of back screens, coming off of down screens, flying to the corners, hands up, get ready to fire. And he got 7 3-point attempts up in this game. So he only hit one, but his whole game is volume 3-point shooting. So they only have two guys who could really initiate offense. So how do you simplify an offense for a team that doesn't have too much shot creation on the perimeter outside of two guys? It's slowing the game down by getting to the free throw line. The fact that those two guys combined for 16 free throws, and to put it into perspective, the team shot 25 free throw attempts as a team, and they got 16 from those two alone. And usually Steph Curry, he averages usually about 4 free throw attempts per game. So this was actually a step up for him, getting to 8. Steph, I think Kenny Beecham, he said this on one of his YouTube videos before that. Steph Curry is like one of the only superstars that like does not get to the free throw line. He needs to, he needs to, and he should. Because he's a 90+% free throw shooter, and it's something that adds to his game where that's easily another 5-6 points a night from him getting to the free throw line if he just played more downhill. We know how dangerous he is as a 3-point shooter, how he can dance on folks and make them look silly on the perimeter trying to guard him, and especially trying to chase him all around the half court off of screens and everything. But like his ability to get to the basket, finish through contact, and get to the free throw line, like he's one of the most elite floater finishers in NBA history, and maybe that's part of the reason why he doesn't get a ton of contact is because he's always finishing his shots in more of almost like a mid-range shot because of where he can take off from dang near the free throw line and hit those nice little floaters that he knocks down every year. But the Golden State Warriors look like a team that understands they have a very small window. Obviously, they have this year and next year as their only real championship contending window left, given the fact that that's what the timeline for Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green is. Because even if those guys were to get re-signed after their contracts all end in the same year, do we really think that they're still going to be championship contenders 2 years from now? Like Draymond Green said something the other day where he was like, I feel like I can play 4 to 5 more years. And he had himself a good game. Don't get me wrong. 13 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, hit a pair of threes, looked solid defensively against Jokic in this game. Like, sure, in your mind, do what you got to do. 4 to 5 years is a lot for his advanced age already. And also, there's a difference between saying you can play 4 to 5 more years and saying that you can play 4 to 5 more championship caliber seasons. So they know that this window is very short. And I think they can tell because they're playing with a certain level of urgency. They look good being able to close games through the first two games against the Lakers and the Nuggets. They just, when it came to closing these games, they just looked much better. And they looked much more fluid, and this might be a bold claim. I don't know if it is just yet because, this guy is just that special as it is. But I think Steph Curry is going to reemerge as an MVP candidate this year. I know that feels a little, hyperbolic to say, knowing he scored 42 after scoring only 18 in that first game. But I also kind of think that he's going to have to be MVP caliber if we're going to be talking about this team as like a championship contender and not just like a team that could be, dangerous in the Western Conference. Like, it's one thing to be viewed as like oh man, I wouldn't want to face them in the first round kind of team. And that's what Golden State kind of is you know, coming into the season. But I think they're gonna if Steph Curry looks like an MVP, like how he looked in this game against Denver, they go from being the team you don't want to see in the first round to like the team that you might end up having to worry about going through to win the championship if you're somebody like Oklahoma City. So, high praise for Golden State. Just quick thoughts on Denver. I'll do something a little bit more deep dive on them after I see them play one more game because I have some thoughts, but there's something in particular about Denver that I want to see, and I need one more game or one or two more games to really kind of hone in on it. But Aaron Gordon, 50 ball, 17 of 21 from the field. Nikola Jokic, you sold my parlay. That's all I'm going to say, bro. 21, 13, and 10. I needed you to knock down three threes. You took 13 3-point attempts and hit two. Come on, man. That one hurt. That one hurt. And Jamal Murray, 25 points, 10 assists. I think the biggest thing for me is just the fact that this team, we'll see. We'll, we'll see. The long and short of what I want to say about the Denver Nuggets is that this is a team that I think they're gonna have to work out the kinks of figuring out themselves offensively. Um, because this is a team that kind of already looks like they've leaned more towards a more offensive centric lineup just from their starting five alone. The only like plus defender in the starting lineup probably is Christian Brown, and to a lesser degree Aaron Gordon. No disrespect to Cam Johnson, but he's more of your 3 and D wing. That's more of the 3 than he is the D in that sense. Pause if that's necessary. And that 3 ball was not landing for him last night. Six 3-point attempts out of his 8 shots. 6 of them were threes. Only hit one of them. Maybe just got the jitters. Game 1 in a new uniform on the road against a Golden State Warriors team that's riding high and has all of you know Oracle Arena or whatever kind of like you know barreling down on you. So maybe that had a lot to do with it. But yeah, I'm gonna deep dive on Denver in a completely different episode. I want to see them in one or two more games, but I'm focusing heavily on Cam Johnson's um initiation into Denver Nuggets basketball playing next to Nikola Jokic. So I want to watch a little bit more film. I specifically want to watch those 3-point attempt possessions and get a feel for how he's getting his shot creation for the Nuggets. And I think after one or two more games, seeing how he plays next to Jokic and seeing what the production from that is, I'll be able to give you a better explanation of how I feel about what Cam Johnson is for this team. But I don't have a ton of takeaways from the Denver Nuggets just yet. Like I said, on the road, first game of the season, you're playing the Golden State Warriors, who have one of the best home court advantages in the NBA, regular season, postseason, NBA Finals, all of it, right? And you get what's that? 96 points from 3 starters. 96 points out of 131 scored. And again, Aaron Gordon played absolutely out of his mind. So if he plays any worse than only missing 4 shots, and he shot 10 of 11 from 3, like Aaron Gordon played absolutely out of his mind. So it's like I don't even know what to pull from this game to a certain extent, because it's like if Cam Johnson did that, I'd be like, okay, he's fitting into the offense automatically. The catch and shoot threes are translating out the gate. No. But it was Aaron Gordon, and he is a better 3-point shooter. He hasn't been an improved 3-point shooter since joining the Denver Nuggets. But I mean, he just played absolutely out of his body, and I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to take from that, to be honest. Triple double machine. Jamal Murray, solid outing. Cool. So, like I said, I'll talk about the Denver Nuggets a little bit deeper on a different episode after I've seen them play a game or two more. But for right now, man, what a game. What a game, and shout out to Aaron Gordon. Last but not least, you can probably tell through 3 episodes of this podcast that I'm somebody who likes to focus a lot on the X's and O's and the real on tape stuff of watching NBA basketball. So I'm not the type to get into the drama and theatrics off the floor of the NBA very often, right? There's all types of different things that go on off the court, storylines like the Jalen Green situation, if you know, you know. Um, the Malik Beasley situation, if you know, you know, right? There's a couple of different scenarios this offseason where, you know, off the court stuff can be a good gossip topic for a podcast if you're looking for something to fill the time. Um, and I'm usually not really into that kind of stuff because I don't feel like it serves any purpose, and usually it doesn't contribute to whether or not that guy or those guys or that team is effective on the floor, right? The Malik Beasley situation is a little bit different because it truly affected his free agency situation, and he right now is not playing for a team, and he's coming off of one of his best years of his career as a 3-point shooter. So maybe that one matters a little bit more, but typically the off the court stuff, unless it led to an injury or it led to an arrest, which we'll get to in a second, usually it doesn't flow onto the floor enough for you to be worried about it really impacting your favorite basketball team. Until now. Until now. And I'm gonna address it. I'm gonna address it briefly, and I'm gonna do it in a funny but modest way. The NBA, with the NIL stuff going on in college athletics, and the rise of sports betting apps like FanDuel and DraftKings and ESPN Bet, they've really leaned into the gambling space in a way that's quite special. First of all, I feel like it's a strong reflection of the problem the league has had for the last decade plus, where guys were getting suspended and losing, significant money, and also kind of taking a hit to their reputation because of things like smoking weed, right? Because it feels a little silly to, dismiss a guy from his team or suspend him for a significant time or fine him for smoking weed, but on a night-to-night basis, you're promoting Budweiser and all these other different kinds of alcoholic beverages on a night-to-night basis, which you can make the argument alcohol is just as bad as weed. I'm not here to be the moral police on that, but just saying. And gambling can be just as dangerous of a vice as smoking weed or alcoholism, right? So the fact that the NBA and all sports, quite frankly, have gotten into the gambling game, the vice that it is always is going to come with its net negatives. And one of them is that you can't really regulate everybody in terms of who is to participate. So here's what we're going to do, because there's a lot of reporting around this. There's a lot of news around it. And it can all get kind of convoluted, very complicated if, you read all these different reports all kind of at one time. It can just feel like a brain dump. It's kind of like if you were walking into a courtroom and kind of just handed, this full layout of what the situation is with no further context behind what the person is, what the person's background is, or anything else. You're just handed, a big packet of information with independent clauses and everything else. Like it just again, it's very complicated. So here's what we're gonna do. I have a phone, as we all do. Shout out to AI. One of my favorite apps personally when it comes to collecting information is Perplexity. So we're going to ask Perplexity, can you explain in Cliff Notes version what is going on with the NBA gambling situation? Because you just see names and you just see images, right? You see Chauncey Billups, you see Terry Rozier, you hear Mafia, right? You hear that 30 names have been detained. You hear that the Portland Trailblazers, in the meantime of this situation with Chauncey, you hear that Tiago Splitter, had to say it, is going to be the interim head coach for the Portland Trailblazers in the meantime. Like, it's a it's just a lot of stuff going on. So let's read what perplexity's summary of this whole thing is. It says the 2025 NBA gambling situation involves a major FBI investigation and arrest related to an illegal gambling and rigged poker scheme. Prominent NBA figures arrested include Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups, and former player Damon Jones. I think that's also the same guy that J.R. Smith threw the soup on. That's neither here nor there. They are accused of sharing insider information such as player injuries, lineup changes, and tanking plans to place bets with a high likelihood of winning, often through illegal sportsbooks and intermediaries to obscure the money trail. Rozier is specifically under investigation for giving non public details used in betting on 7 NBA games, which could violate league rules that allow lifetime bans for gambling offenses. Billups and Jones are charged with helping organize rigged poker games tied to mafia families involving wire fraud and money laundering. The scheme reportedly involved millions of dollars and linked organized crime with NBA insiders. The arrests have led to the NBA placing Rozier and Billups on indefinite leave, and the scandal exposes ongoing risks connected to legalized sports betting and its impact on legal integrity. Lawmakers are responsible with calls for tighter regulation and safeguards in the sports betting industry. This scandal is the NBA's second major gambling controversy in 2 years, Jonte Porter, and has shaken the league during its new season start amid a historic broadcast deal. Other little nuggets of information that were thrown out there was like the leaking of injury situations regarding LeBron James and Anthony Davis on when Davis was on the Los Angeles Lakers. Um, this is trouble, and the worst part is like they've already kind of, let's say, detained slash collected like 30 plus individuals. And like I don't think it's gonna get any better. I think it's actually gonna get worse before it gets better. The NBA has a gambling problem, and it's built out of the fact that there's so many games, there's so many talents, there's so many guys who also don't get on the floor. By the way, just throwing that out there, just being fair. Somebody like Jonte Porter wasn't surprised by any means to a certain extent that he got caught in this because as a guy who's not gonna make a ton of money in his career due to his talent, being able to bet on games is a way to get yourself some bread while being an insider, and doing so as a guy with a pretty low profile would typically be considered as a dude most people wouldn't be watching, or watching out for. Um, so I don't think it's gonna get any better before it gets worse. I think more names are gonna come up, and I think it's gonna take one real prominent name to really set this whole thing ablaze. Right now, that name at the top of the list is Chauncey Billups, because he's a head coach of a basketball franchise. Um, but I genuinely believe that here's the thing. Um, as sports becomes more of a business, and more of entertainment than it is competitiveness, and it is, a true test of a team's ability to make, a championship run, and it becomes more about like clicks, views, highlight plays, and you know, simply putting on a show, um, things like gambling are just gonna take over. And the reason for that is because people are no longer invested in whether or not their team is good. Um, I said this kind of in passing earlier when I was talking about the Denver Nuggets, like, Jokic, you messed up my parlay. That's a lot of how people speak nowadays when they talk about sports, right? It's not necessarily, and don't get me wrong, there's people who's loyal to the soil to their team, but people are much more loyal to their favorite player, or they're much more loyal to whoever's going to help them hit their parlay that night, or whichever team is going to help them hit their parlay that night, right? Um, and that means so many more names are going to be involved in this space because loyalty to the team, loyalty to organization is no longer what it used to be. And so the integrity around it is also no longer what it used to be. The mafia is crazy. Um, Being in cahoots with the mafia is crazy. I know, Mafia Old Country came out earlier, this year. Shout out to that game, actually kind of a fire game. Not the point though. But didn't even really know like mafias were still like running around. Not to say they don't exist, but like especially in the United States, I didn't know that like, NBA players and coaches had like access to even get jammed up by the mafia. Maybe that's just my naivety. Maybe that's just me being in the house too much. Don't know. But I don't have a ton of analysis on this per se because at the end of the day, like I don't really know what this is gonna mean for the league moving forward. This is a big year for the NBA as far as getting the NBA back on NBC. This being a big year as far as this is gonna be the last year of Chris Paul. This is another year of seeing whether or not the parity in the league sticks. There's a bunch of different storylines to cling on to, whether it's the LeBron James situation with him and the Los Angeles Lakers, whether or not he's going to be on the team, past this season. Giannis Antetokounmpo with him and the trade rumors that constantly are surrounding him. I think Colin Cowherd said something earlier on his show about the Bucks sending him to Golden State. Like that's a storyline. Like there's plenty of storyline narratives being pushed around the NBA on the floor. Um, Paired with the national TV rights deal that's so big and so important for the growth of this game. And then you just got this kind of like thorn in their side now of NBA meets the mafia. So this is something to monitor because maybe one of your, key role players ends up getting jammed up in this thing too. Um it's going to take a real star player for this thing to really like fall apart, like and really become like a big like it's already an issue. I would say it's already a really big deal, but this whole scene gets busted wide open once they find out that like a star was involved. The likelihood of that is probably pretty low, so these guys will probably all get handled pretty quickly. I think if a star player were in the mix of this would be a much more overblown situation than it already even is. um yeah, I mean, the NBA is in a weird spot. The NBA is in a really weird spot. But in my personal opinion, I think that's what comes with steering away from trying to have competitive basketball on a night to night basis and trying to make everything look like entertainment and a circus. Like, yes, it's supposed to be a fun, enjoyable experience for the viewer. That's usually just supposed to be built out of the talent. Being able to bet on the games, it's cool, but it doesn't change the viewer experience for me. Sure, it adds some money to my pocket if I win, but I'm not any more invested, at least me personally, I'm not any more invested in the game due to my parlay being placed than if I were watching the game just for fun because I just enjoy the game of basketball. And there's a lot of people who genuinely just enjoy the game of basketball more than they do um, trying to see guys drop 30 so they might win a couple extra bucks. But then you have people who only like sports because they can win a couple extra bucks. So it just depends on where you're coming from. But again, I think that this NBA gambling issue is only going to get worse before it gets better. Maybe I'll drop another video here and there as updates come out on TikTok and the YouTube Shorts, but I'm not going to be doing any more podcasting on this. But I did have to address it at least a little bit because some of your favorite teams are going to be missing some role players soon. Maybe they might be as high profile as Terry Rozier, and they might be as low profile as somebody like Jonte Porter. It all kind of depends, but nonetheless, it is kind of leaking onto the floor a little bit, and hopefully the Portland Trailblazers are able to kind of still hang even without Chauncey. They only lost by 4 against the Minnesota Timberwolves the other night. Had a really strong game from Jeremy Grant off the bench. I think they're still going to be a pretty interesting team to keep tabs on throughout the Western Conference this season. We'll see. But as far as the NBA gambling stuff is concerned, they've got a lot on their hands. And shout out to Adam Silver. He's going to need all the luck he can get because 2 scandals in 2 years. It's tough. It's tough. But with that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember to like, comment, subscribe for more NBA content. Man, it's been a strong first week. Thank you for all of you guys who have already watched the videos, liked the videos, subscribed to the channel. This was a really big step for me, again, as I've said on the past episodes, of finally jumping out and feeling comfortable with recording a podcast by myself again. I've tried this so many times in the past, and I wasn't able to be consistent, and I didn't trust myself enough to be able to build a platform of my own. And I really sat down and invested a lot of time into doing stuff like building these graphics to help the viewer experience be a little bit easier, and learning the game from a nuanced perspective that helped me, add to my ability to break down the game on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not just sitting here regurgitating stuff to you guys that you can listen to on ESPN or Fox Sports from somebody else. I want to be able to give a unique take. I want to be able to give a unique view, a unique vibe, to covering NBA basketball and enjoying NBA basketball through a different way. And hopefully, this is the first week of many weeks in terms of, showing that off. I hope you guys learn over the next couple of months that I do know ball. I hope you guys learn something about basketball over the next couple of months from me, through me talking about the game. And I'll be doing much more than just the podcast in terms of sharing my thoughts. I'll be doing TikToks. I'll be doing one-off videos that are, 7 to 10 minutes long, just kind of giving thoughts on teams like the Denver Nuggets, like I mentioned earlier a few times. So there's a lot more content coming. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And hit that post notification bell so we always know when we're dropping new videos. No more podcasts for the rest of this week. Again, Mondays through Friday. You can catch it every single week. But I will probably be recording a couple of TikToks and maybe another, long form video sometime over the weekend. So stay tuned for that. But with all that being said, this has been another edition of the Routine Jumper Podcast, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.